Greetings from a fishing village on the Atlantic coast. You've tuned in to podcast Portwenn, celebrating the world of Doc Martin unofficially. I'm Chesley Wexler, and we'll be discussing Doc Martin, the medicine, the mayhem, and the marvelous people of Portwenn. This episode, we have Patty the Newbie discussing Season 4. Patty, come through, and welcome back to podcast Portwenn.
Everybody.
So why don't we talk about general impressions first, and then we will do some episode and character discussion, and we'll try to defer our best medicine stuff to the end.
Well, I would say this season surprised me a little bit because I felt like Martin almost backpedaled in terms of being a human being. And I thought that a little bit sooner. I thought he might show more interest in the baby a little bit sooner than he did. And there were a couple times where I thought, he was just like meaner. So it surprised me in that sense. Louisa showing up pregnant was kind of a surprise, but not that much.
You thought that might happen after they slept together in Season 3?
Well, yeah. Okay, so they're supposed to get married, and it was clear that they had slept together before that, and maybe not too many times, but yeah, I mean, I've watched enough TV shows that that's kind of a predictable thing to happen. Although this show is maybe not as predictable as some, but yeah.
I didn't see that coming. Chris and I were like, oh my goodness.
But the other thing, I don't know if, because I'm watching them so many years after they were made and on these, weird channels, I don't know if when they started Season 4, do you have any idea how much time has passed? Because I didn't, and I don't know if I wasn't paying attention to some blurb they said at the beginning, but, I thought it would be like a week later, and clearly not. Or if it is, it's not his. So
yeah, I can't recall if they actually said 6 months later or we just learned that when she's 6 months pregnant.
Right.
Yeah.
And it almost seemed like, again, from episode to episode, they don't tell you how much time has passed, but I felt like we're on episode 6 out of 8 and she looks the same amount pregnant. And then all of a sudden in the last one, okay, now she looks bigger. So, but that can happen. Every woman's pregnancy is different, and some women pop right away, and some women seem skinny. Oh my gosh, look how huge she got. So
funny. And then there's, Mr. Strain pushing her over, which is not cool. And when she's pregnant, she looked pretty pregnant there, but I see what you're saying. Like she didn't really grow much as time went on.
Yeah, I mean, she looked pregnant from the beginning of the season. It was just that she didn't look a little bit more each episode like I would have expected. I didn't think until, I think it was either the 7th or the 8th. They said, okay, now they do have her bigger. So.
Okay. Maybe they only had 2 prosthetics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see, what else? We got Edith Montgomery.
She's interesting. I'm trying to decide, is she on the spectrum or what is her issue? Because here she is, she's a fertility doctor, but she's not particularly sensitive to pregnant women or any patient. Because if she wants him to be where she wants him to be, she's like, well, call an ambulance. She didn't have any sympathy for, I'm a doctor, they have no other doctor, I have to help. And for all his failings, Martin gets that. He feels like he's a doctor, he has to help. And, whoever's the most qualified at the time, and, he'll say, call an ambulance, but meanwhile, until the ambulance gets here, I'm going to do whatever I can do to save this person. Yeah. Didn't like her at all. And man, if I was pregnant, I would want this woman as my fertility doctor.
Doesn't Louisa want to change from her?
Well, I'm not sure how much of it's her and how much of it's the situation, but I'm saying that because the situation was weird, knowing that she was Martin's ex. So you might not want to for that reason only, even if she was a wonderful doctor, but she was not a wonderful doctor or a wonderful person. She might be smart, like research wise, but definitely lacking in the human element department.
So even in episode 1, we see that Edith, as smart as she is, and she kind of seems almost like the female Martin, she's not even necessarily a doctor that's paying attention, right? Because she just completely misses this lady's problem.
Right. That was pretty interesting because Martin wants to be a surgeon again, or so he says. And this woman, Edith, is recommending surgery. And a lot of people think, if you go to a surgeon, you're going to have surgery because that's what they do. But a really good surgeon doesn't do that. They only tell you need surgery, if you really do. And in this case, he was saying, you have to do the CT scan, or was it MRI? I'm not sure which, but because I don't know that she does need surgery. And Edith refused to do it. So he just, did it anyway. And sure enough, he was right. So yeah, so that didn't make, and Edith didn't even seem that bothered by her mistake. She seemed like, how dare you second guess me? And I just felt like she doesn't really care about her patients. And for all the lack of feelings that Martin seems to have, he wants to do the right medical solution, and because for the benefit of his patients. So he's got this just weird combination of trying to do something that really, really is in their best interest because it's in their best interest. But boy,
Yeah. Yeah. That seems to be his biggest thing, right? Is that he doesn't talk to people nicely. He's, rude, but he's certainly caring, and in the sense that the duty of care that he has towards his patient is, I think we're in agreement that he's absolutely got that. And then where we disagree is whether that translates into, does he actually care?
I don't know if I disagree. I'm still watching. I'm just seeing. I was hoping to see what I would call a little more growth in terms of showing that he cares a little bit better. And I don't, and particularly in season 4, if anything, I thought it was flat or backwards in terms of growth. And I think it was probably all because he didn't really make good choices with respect to Louisa, and he was regretting them and didn't know how to get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's
And
faced
especially
with.
when she said, "Oh, I don't need you, Martin." That really made him. I was going to tell her, but now I can't because she told me she doesn't want me to. And he just like spiraled downward there, I think.
There's so much miscommunication in this series, in this particular season, of the two of them just assuming the wrong thing and saying something out of anger, which if they had just waited a beat, they might have said something that could have made it better, but it just builds and builds and builds and builds.
And like I said in the beginning, that's kind of what surprised me. I thought maybe that I didn't think it was going to take as long for some of that communication to get, not perfected, but a little bit more forward progress.
Yeah.
The writers kept me guessing.
Oh yeah. 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 The season it's unpredictable, I think. I mean, she's going to have the baby at some point.
Right.
But you really don't know the circumstances. And he certainly seems to want to get the hell out of Dodge as far as getting back to London and going back to surgery, and feels very rejected by her. And yet at the same time, he keeps the ultrasound, right? He keeps the ultrasound photo.
And pulled it out and looked at it more than once. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he thinks he wants to convince himself he wants to get out of Dodge, but he really doesn't want to get out of Dodge, but he doesn't want to be rejected. So, yeah.
Some other character stuff that we've got going on here, which is fascinating, is we get Mrs. Tishell's husband Clive comes back, huh?
Like, who is this and where did this come from? And that was a total shock. Because she clearly was, flirting with Martin before that, and I don't know about during, but definitely after he left again. But yeah, that was total shock. I had no idea she had a husband, and yeah, I found that whole thing, that whole plot line very strange.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't remember if she mentioned, well, there's Clive, but I might be in the wrong season. I'm not sure. But we certainly know she's Mrs. Tishell, right? But we don't know whether he's. Yeah. I thought we had a sense by now that she was married, but it is interesting when he comes back because he loves her. He really, really loves her.
Yeah. And he was very excited to see her and be with her. And yeah, it's like, well, why are you still married to him if that's how you feel about him? And if she just thought, because he's away so much, I can just stay married and go along and have my fun when he's gone, or I don't know, that whole thing seemed weird. And I thought I wouldn't think she'd do that, but yeah, people are complex.
Yes, there. I don't know what the requirements are for a security officer on an oil rig. Like, I don't know if that's a complicated job or a simple job. Like, is he just enforcing discipline on the rig, or is he actually doing like compliance of safety procedures? I'm not sure, but she always seemed to gravitate to Martin, I thought, because she's a pharmacist. Like, that's a job that requires quite an intellectual capacity. And then this other guy with the intellectual capacity comes in, and who knows, but if he had hearing.
Yeah, he did not seem like the sharpest tool in the shed. So, but he didn't seem like a bad guy.
No.
Yeah.
No. And he
like
loves
you said,
her.
He really seems to love her. Yeah. Yeah. I found that kind of sad. And Mrs. Tish, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. But everybody wants their little love line, right? We've got Bert trying to find a girlfriend.
Yeah, that was sad and a little weird. I mean, that was one of the episodes towards the end, I think. But the woman was clearly flirting, and I didn't feel like Bert was making something that wasn't there. I think she seemed to be flirting, and he was responding to that. And then when they had to, help her husband when he was so sick, and the husband said to Bert, "Oh, don't take it personal." It's like he knew that she'd been flirting. She does that to everybody. And then you see later on somebody else comes in and she's like flirting again.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like personality trait, right? But that's one understanding husband.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say, because it seemed like she did love him. "Oh, my Mikey, you can't leave me," whatever. And,
Yeah.
wait a minute, lady, what are you? I thought she was like Mrs. Tishell, but she's not. But I don't know,
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was way past the line of being friendly if I were the spouse to tolerate that, is what I could say all I could say for me.
I agree. I don't think I would be going for that. But doesn't
Yeah.
Bert end up? Does he have a date with somebody else in this season, or am I thinking of something else?
I don't remember another date because I think that episode was pretty late, wasn't it?
I mean, does he do? Doesn't Bert? Doesn't he like sit down with
No,
Caitlin?
maybe not. Maybe you're
I
right.
think he sits down with Caitlin, and Caitlin just wants to like go to bed with him immediately or something, and
Yeah.
he's like,
Oh, yes. Yeah. But that before this lady?
yes,
Or was that,
yes,
yeah, I think it was before. Yeah. Yeah. And I, like I said in earlier podcasts, I a couple times found Bert a little too mean to Martin. And like I felt like it crossed the line in terms of friendly versus unfriendly teasing. But I really, I don't know, identified with him or felt good for him when he said, I want a relationship. I don't want to just do that. He didn't want just friends with benefits. He wanted a relationship, the whole thing. And
right,
I liked that when he said that.
yeah, yeah. Have I told you that there's a whole society of like the Bert Large Lovers Society or something like that, who are fans of the show and just absolutely love Bert?
Well, he definitely has good qualities. Like I said, I thought his teasing was beyond what was reasonable before, but it's not like he was ever totally a bad guy. He definitely has good qualities, and I would say he's growing more on me now because
Yeah.
I haven't seen him be, what I thought was, that mean again. And he definitely cares for his son and tries to do what's best for his son, whether or not his actions are what's best. He has a good heart.
Where are they with the restaurant at this point? Because I have not watched season 3 or season 4. So I'm like working off my notes and IMDb episode descriptions.
Well, they're still running it, but it seems like it is hanging by a thread. Now, they made an allusion, I think, in the previous season that nobody that's tried to run a restaurant here has had success. It's always been a problem, which I
Right.
found, kind of interesting because all I can think of is it's right by the sea. You got this beautiful view. Why wouldn't you want, if the food's at all good, why wouldn't this be a great place to have a restaurant?
Yeah.
So I don't think in season 4, I felt like it was more prominent in season 3, especially when the attempt at a wedding and that they were supposed to pull off. So yeah, I don't think it's dead, but I think it's clearly troublesome. And it seems like
Right.
but maybe it's just Al more than Bert to make some extra money, but they're still kind of plumbing on the side at least.
Right.
So
That's right.
if
This is the season where Pauline is like bored with Al or something, and doesn't she try to liven up the relationship or something? And
Yeah, yeah, and he hung out in the bar all night with it because he said, "Okay, yeah." Bert tried. He did exactly what he said he wasn't going to do, and he talked to. He got.
right.
I almost called her Elaine. He got Pauline to open up, and so she did. And he kind of promised he wouldn't tell Al. And the first thing he does is go and tell Al.
Yep.
And so then Al decides, okay, she thinks I'm too boring. She thinks I don't hang out with other people enough. So he cancels a date with her and hangs out in a bar with nobody because he didn't. She was kind of right on some of the stuff.
On all of it.
That he didn't have. So that whole thing was that was funny. Yeah. And then she's like, well, but you didn't get back to me. Well, you told me I was. So
Yes.
kind of
Maybe
an
he's not so
adjustment there.
bad after all.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it seemed like by the end of that episode.
So at the end of season 3, you had your first taste of Joe Penhale. So now you've had another season of Joe Penhale under your belt. What's your thinking of the new constable?
I still miss Mark, but they obviously both have positives and negatives, but I just sort of something about Mark resonated with me better. This guy to me is, we've talked before about whether this is a drama with some comedy thrown in, but I feel like he's just there for comic relief. And even with Mark's innocence and his foibles, or whatever, I still felt like he was a decent constable. I'm less sure about this one.
Yeah.
And there was that episode where his brother was in it. Seemed like totally different. Well, I guess very different because he was doing something illegal in the end. I did
Yeah.
not see that coming at all. I knew that his illness was something with the paint. That part seemed pretty obvious, but I did not at all pick up on that he was a forger and that so
Yeah.
that was interesting.
And Joe, of course, is practically a hypochondriac with whatever Sam has, I must have it. And I
Yeah.
think there's
It's
a
genetic,
line
and
in
I've
there?
got Huntington's disease is a very serious disease,
It is.
and
Yes.
it wasn't quite clear what happened with their father, but Martin actually was pretty good with that in maybe not the best, definitely not the best bedside manner, but medically good that you don't just assume
Right.
okay, your father died young, but why did he die? I don't have his charts. I don't know why he died.
Right.
And yeah, so he actually kind of humored Joe more than maybe Joe deserved with with the tests and stuff.
I thought that speaking of Martin with handling things well, I thought he handled, is it Pauline's uncle who was having like questions about his sexuality? I thought he was.
They were trying to get pregnant and
Yeah.
couldn't, and he was taking anabolic steroids because he thought that would make him more like, not
Heterosexual.
bisexual.
Yeah.
What heterosexual
Hetero. Yes.
only, yeah. And so Martin's like, no, you're just getting your testosterone up to an unsafe level. And that whole conversation between him, like it was clear that Martin was accepting of different kinds of sexuality, but didn't really want to go into great detail on it. And to his point, he's not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and that is where he should refer. Your GP is not who you should be talking to about if you're having feelings you don't want to have, or you're having feelings you don't understand, or whatever. You really should go to somebody who's a trained therapist, which Martin is clearly not, and did not miss calling it. So
No.
but
But he was willing to
conversation-
do research, though, right? He was willing to look stuff up.
Yeah. And then people think I'm not researching for me.
Yeah. Pauline thinks, aren't you a dark horse? Or aren't you a dark one, right?
Yeah.
I thought that was a pretty funny line.
I felt a little sad for I initially felt sad for the wife there, but then when he said she thinks it's really exciting, I was like, okay, that he's married to a good woman. And it didn't seem like he didn't love her, and it didn't seem like he wasn't attracted to her, so maybe he is bi. I don't know.
Yeah. I liked how he was like, that would be okay with me. Like, I would be okay with bisexual. Not homosexual. Bisexual would be okay. Like, that it was an interesting way to see a character sort of try to navigate whatever he's feeling.
Yeah. But the other thing in that episode that I noticed, totally not with those characters, but that Edith called Aunt Joan, "Oh, hi, Jill. Nice to see you again. Even though I don't remember your name."
Yes. Yeah.
And you could tell from the second Joan saw her that Joan did not like her, the look on her face. And I'm not even sure she bothered to correct her because she just didn't like her.
No. I think she kind of broke Martin's heart.
Yeah. I don't know if that was the reason, or if she didn't like her just for herself, because
could be.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah,
both.
Yeah.
Now, was that the same episode with the headmaster? I think it was. With the headmaster clearly had something wrong, and he took the kids in the water, and Louisa had to go and try and rescue them, and she calls Martin to get him there to help the headmaster, but she didn't want the guy to know that she was talking to Martin. And Martin pretty quickly figures out, oh, he's there and he's in earshot and you're trying. So Martin was pretty quick to figure that out. Yeah. And then he gets there, and then the guy, totally, I'm going to use a very non-medical word here, flips out and goes in the water. And Martin goes after him, and Louisa is standing there with the kids watching. And I was like, okay, maybe she's torn, but you have to get those kids to safety. This is your opportunity. And I couldn't believe she was staying on the beach with the kids watching. And, I was trying to figure out, how close is the school? Can the kids get back to school by themselves, or does she have to escort them? But those kids, you got to prioritize those kids and get them to safety. So I was kind of annoyed that she stayed on the beach then, but
okay.
anyway.
I was thinking that she pretty much figured he was not a danger anymore, because first of all, the guy's going off to sea and Martin's a big guy. He's going to wrestle him. And then next thing you know, Martin's in trouble, right? So it's like, now what do I do,
But
right?
I just kept thinking these kids have been traumatized for the last however many hours, and you should get them away from the source of even if you know that can no longer hurt the kids, at least with Martin there. Between the two of them, they can protect the kids. I just didn't like that those kids were still standing there watching, that wasn't over for them. But anyway.
Yeah. I hadn't even had that thought, but I mean, that's probably just me. Like, if they were dogs, I probably would have been like, somebody help the dogs because I don't have kids. Horrible statement, but true.
I thought they were in the same episode, but they weren't. They were in different episodes. There were two things that I was like, oh, related to me. There was some question about whether the baby was small. And so I can't remember if it was Edith I think it was Edith.
Yeah, Edith.
Uncomfortable conversation. Like, when was the last time you and Martin had relations? And she was like, mid-October, the 11th. And it was like, oh, October 11th. That's my birthday.
Well, there you go.
I would have no idea what date it was if it was that she said. I would not remember at all, but it was my birthday.
That's funny.
But then there was another episode where it turned out that the person this is where I thought he was kind of mean. The widow she kept talking about her husband's telling her from the grave that you're sick and you need to get checked out, and Martin kept dismissing her. And I felt like he could have been a little more gentle with her, like he was in the previous season, or actually season 2, when they found out that Mark was infertile.
Yeah.
I just felt like he told him a little more gently than you might expect Martin to be able to do. And in this case, this woman, she misses her husband. She's distressed, and he's like totally dismissing her. And then it turns out she really is sick, and she has Lyme disease, which I was like, oh, they have that in England, because it's very familiar to me because my husband had it like 2 or 3 times.
Ugh.
So
Ugh. Yeah.
Could relate to that.
Wasn't he pretty compassionate, like, the first time when, like, first of all, he didn't know what to say, right? Because she comes to him and she has no medical problem. He didn't treat a medical problem in the guy. He just died next to him on the train. So it's like,
right.
Did you want to talk to me about something medical? And it's like he doesn't know.
The answer is no. Get out. I just felt like
like what to do with her.
I felt like a quote normal doctor would realize that maybe she just wanted to hear what were his last few minutes like. What was it? Because he was the last person to see him alive. So I just felt like Martin kind of missed that whole cue, and not surprising, but that was kind of sad for me, because I just felt like she was a grieving widow that he wasn't at all being sympathetic towards.
And I think Louisa sort of picked up on that, right? Didn't Louisa say, well, Martin, you were the last person who, she just wants some words. But then I think when he came back, it's not unusual to hear your loved one or something. But
it was a little better
by
the first time.
The third time he's like, I don't know what to say.
But there was something wrong with her all along. He didn't notice it until she got headbutted by the sheep or something and was hurt, and Aunt Joan called to have him come look at her, and then he noticed the bullseye rash, because as soon as she lifted up her shirt, I said, oh, Lyme disease.
Did she have any symptoms though when she came to see him, other than like
I think she had a fever in there at some point. I think she did have a fever.
Okay, because I didn't remember her having symptoms.
Having gone through it, and the symptoms can vary, but it's kind of what my husband experienced was kind of a general malaise. I mean, it's not like you're constantly coughing, and he did have a fever, and he just like couldn't get out of bed. And she actually seemed to have a little more energy than he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought she had a fever. Maybe not. I don't remember now.
I volunteer at a horse rescue, and a couple of weeks ago, I had a mark on my leg, and I thought it might have been like a tick bite or something, but it was weird because it never did a bullseye rash, but it was like this raised area in a couple of spots. And then the next day it started turning into what looked like just a bruise. And I went to I had a dermatologist appointment, so I had him look at it. And he goes, no, you probably just bumped yourself, or maybe you did get a bite and it's now turned into a bruise from the bite. But I was worried it might be one of those Lone Star ticks. And since I'm going to England and intend to consume pasties, I actually had a hamburger the other day to make sure that if I was going to have, Yeah, if I was going to have a reaction, I wanted to have it in the U.S. before I went to England.
Yeah.
I don't want to be afraid to have pasties because I really love them.
There, in that same episode, there were a couple of lines that I thought were kind of funny, or telling. One of them was telling, the other one was kind of funny. When, I'm trying to remember what precipitated this. Martin said, "I was locked in a cupboard all the time as a child." Oh, it was the kid that was in the chicken coop, and whether Aunt Joan should have done that. The misbehaving kid, who was abominable. I mean, he was just horrible.
Yes.
Not that I'm justifying putting him in a chicken coop, but he dismissed that when Louise was saying, "But you can't put them in a chicken coop," and he's like, "Why not? I was locked in a cupboard all the time as a child, and it didn't affect me." Okay.
Yes.
Might want to rethink that, Martin.
Well, I mean, but
And,
that's yet another example, right? Of now he's been belittled by his parents, made fun of all the
Right.
time, told he was never loved, beaten with a table tennis bat, whacked with a belt, and now locked in a cupboard.
And locked in a cupboard, right? It sounded like Harry Potter. But
Yeah. But I mean, they're building this sort of record of, emotional and physical abuse.
yeah, and then that same kid who got sick, and actually maybe this is okay, never mind. That was a separate issue. But also in that episode, I think that's when he started going to see the therapist, and because he really wanted to get over the blood thing so he could go be a surgeon again. And he was finally willing to try talking to a therapist about it. Yay, Martin. But then the therapist was trying to put him in the situation. Okay, you're in the what do they call the surgery? The theater, I think
The
they call it.
operating theater, yeah.
And and so he was trying to get him to envision what that was like. And then he's saying, "Okay, what do you see?" "Nothing. My eyes are closed."
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
okay. But, and then he walked out on the session, and it was kind of funny because even the therapist said, "Okay, well, we'll conclude today's session now then." And I was like, "It's 5 minutes. It's been 5 minutes. You hardly started the session." But he did give him a CD, and at the end of the show, he's listening to it. So he didn't totally dismiss everything the guy said.
Yeah. And, I mean, he really wants to get better. I mean, he's been told by Louisa, "I don't want you involved," right? And she's just really pushing him away. And I think he's also in his, "I'm not sure I want to stay anyway. So if she's telling me, that's okay, but I'm torn because there is this baby and I'm looking at a picture." Like you could tell he's very torn. And,
Right.
she seems like she's just making a whole bunch of assumptions on what she thinks how he would react. She didn't come back for 6 months because she didn't know what he would say. When he said it's too late to get an abortion, I didn't think he was suggesting that she get one. I think he was just laying out the options and saying that one is not available to you.
Right. I think it was in his mind, he was going, "Okay, so she's pregnant. What do we do? Well, if it was earlier, we could do this, this, or this, but we can no longer do this. So now we're left with, 1 and 2, but not 3. I think he was just like working through it, like problem solving. And she, she kind of called him on that. And he had a valid point. She doesn't know what he would have said if he knew at the very beginning. If he would have said, "I'll support you in whatever choice you make," because he never got that opportunity to say that.
Yeah.
So,
and they really had it out. They had it out in episode 7. I'm trying to remember, but there's an exchange between them, and he's like, "That's a ridiculous assumption," or something like that. They really had it out in episode 7. So you knew, okay, he's leaving town. Like this is done.
Yeah. Well, he had made some progress with the blood by that point, so he figured that, okay, I can go do this.
Right. Let me see if I have
don't
that
think
exchange.
we're gonna be able to find out if he could have.
Right. Yeah. Yep. I mean, but his blood phobia is getting better, right? Because we see him, sort of the desensitization. And then in the episode where Edith has him come to the conference with her and only books one room.
She booked one room. Yeah.
Yeah. And that
And he looked
fingertip.
very uncomfortable. And then, she started to change her clothes, and he looked really uncomfortable and just went in the bathroom or whatever.
Yeah.
And so you know that for whatever went wrong between them, it has not been rekindled in his mind. So
Yes. Yes. And they had a physical relationship because she comes out and says, like, everything's right.
You've seen it before, so what's the big deal? Yeah.
And he does fine with the blood. I mean, he actually treats the blood fine with the guy who slices his fingertip off, right? He's got blood all over him and he's fine.
Right. Yeah. But before he got to that hotel in that same episode at the beginning, there's a man that's in the restroom in the surgery, and Pauline pulls him out of the surgery. Said there's an emergency, and he's looking around the room in the waiting room and said, "Okay, which one of you has an emergency?" And she said, "No, he's in there." And so he talks through the door, "What's the emergency?" And it turns out they're out of toilet paper.
Well,
And
yeah, yeah.
he grabs the newspaper that another patient is reading and hands it to the guy that's in the bathroom. He didn't because he got mad at Pauline and kind of fired her because he told her when she found out he was leaving, he said he would give her a competent reference, but it wasn't as high as she wanted, and she kept doing things to annoy him that she said, "Okay, I'll stop if you give me a better reference." And he kept, refusing. So finally he threw her out. So that would be the kind of thing he would have said, "Pauline, go get toilet paper for this guy." And because she was gone, he just hands the newspaper.
Well,
And I was like, that's pretty
I,
mean.
I don't think he fired her. Did he fire her? I remember that she
Well,
basically was.
he told her to leave. He told her to get out. He told her to get out. I thought she was fired. And that was episode 7. And then in episode 8, she's back. And I was like, wait a minute, didn't he fire her? So did I misinterpret something?
I think that
Was he just telling her to get out that day?
well, she didn't like the competent rating, and what she decided to do, I think, was
Right.
to show all the things that she did that was above and beyond what was really her job
Right.
description, and just stop doing them so he would realize that
Right.
she did more than just what was supposed to be done. But yeah, he gets angry with her and
Yeah.
boots her out, but I don't think he fires her because, like as you say, she's back.
I interpreted that as get out and don't come back, but maybe it was just get out today. And
Mm.
then because at the beginning of the next episode, I was like, okay, she's back and there's no explanation, but I guess maybe I misinterpreted that.
Because there's no sense in firing her because he's leaving, right? So he's just he's going back to London.
Well,
so.
yeah, and but he got frustrated, and I thought he didn't want to put up with even one more day of her pulling that kind of trick. So
Gotcha.
yeah, but he did do like you said a minute ago. When that chef fell into the slicer, and yeah, he did pretty well with that.
Yes.
So but then the next scene, you see him poking his head in where Edith is giving her speech, and he has the suitcase, so he's leaving. And so I thought at that time that he had decided, I'm not going to London, but I guess he just, and then you get so there were 2 things that surprised me in the
Okay.
last episode. I was like, why is Pauline there? Didn't he fire her? And why are they talking about it's his last day? Didn't he decide not to go? And then I realized, okay, he's basically not going to be with Edith regardless of whether he's in London or stays in Portwenn.
But I think that conference was not in London, right? I think
No,
that
it was in
conference.
between. It was in between. It was Truro or something. Yeah.
Okay. So I had just assumed he was not going to stay the night. Like he had decided he was done with Edith.
But when she finished her speech, wasn't he supposed to go and meet with some other doctors at that conference? I thought that there was a purpose for him to be at that conference for his own benefit that wasn't just, I'm her boyfriend, which is why I thought he went in the first place. I don't think he ever went thinking he was going as her boyfriend, because he would seem surprised when there was this key didn't work. She was already in there. He seemed surprised.
Yeah, he
So
didn't know that she was gonna. Yeah, he didn't know she was gonna book one room. But you've just watched this, so you're probably better than I am. But I know he was supposed to join her for lunch and with a person who was evaluating him for the imperial position, and then he had an emergency, right? So he didn't go to that.
Oh no, he had one
But
of his emergencies then. Yeah, that was a different
And
day,
then-
though. I think that was a different
correct.
episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think he was just gonna schmooze a little bit afterward. I don't think it was necessarily. I did not take away from him leaving that he was deciding not to go to London, because the first thing he does when he goes back home, doesn't he
Not
start
going. Yeah.
No, he starts packing, right? Doesn't he start packing stuff?
Well,
Am I thinking of something?
well,
different?
it ended there for episode 7. So in
Mm-hmm.
episode 8, yeah, it starts out where he's packing, and I was like, oh, I guess I misinterpreted that
Mm-hmm.
because I thought he kind of to make London go smoothly. I thought he needed to schmooze with those people after her speech. I thought he needed to schmooze with those people for himself, not just for,
Gotcha.
but maybe it was never that way and I just got it wrong. But
Gotcha.
anyway, so there he is packing and she's back and it was all this like last day, quote, celebration stuff. And it was actually very busy in there. And so and then Edith shows up again and he tells her that he left because he didn't want to be with her. And she says, but I helped you get over your blood. What ego? I helped you get over your blood thing. And now I can help you get over your intimacy thing. You really do want to be intimate with me. You have a problem, but I'll fix it for you. And it's like, what ego? What ego?
But he puts her in her place, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is another one. I didn't fault Bert for this. When Al and Bert were doing something and talking, and Al was kind of like reminiscing, and he said, we'll miss him though, our doc. And Bert just looked at him like,
oh, maybe not.
So, yeah. And this is another example of where I thought even for Martin, this seemed kind of mean. There was a patient that came in that had a cyst on his wrist, and he was convinced that it was cancer and his wife was pregnant, and he was trying to figure out, okay, am I going to see this baby for a few months, a couple years? How long do I have, doc? And he looks at it, says it's a ganglion cyst or something like that, takes a book and hits him with it, and the cyst just goes away. And, I was like, oh, come on, he wouldn't do that. That seemed
it's a real
pretty
thing.
Mean.
But it's a real thing. It's the Bible method of getting rid of it.
I Googled it afterwards, but the normal thing is for a doctor to puncture it, not to hit you with a book. They hit you with a needle and try and, get it out of there.
Not for
but
nothing.
Anyway, that seemed kind of mean.
Back in the 70s or 80s, my mom had one of those, and I swear to God, she got hit by a book by the doctor because I remember being told it was the Bible method. Yes.
Okay.
But that was much
I don't think that would work in 2026.
No.
Yeah, not in lawsuit happy America. That would not work now, I don't think. But
I agree.
You were talking before about lines you want to use to somebody who acts, like a jerk.
Yes.
In this one, when the bartender doesn't want to give him liquor because he thinks the guy is already drunk, when really it was poisoning and somehow alcohol is the antidote, which I never heard of. But anyway, so the bartender's saying, no, I can't do it. I can't give it to you. And he called him, you officious little oaf. I just thought that was a funny insult.
Yes.
You officious little oaf.
He called somebody a eunuch at one point. I think that was last season, wasn't it? Or whenever, it might have been season 2 when the physician's friend guy was there. He called him like some sort of officious or supercilious eunuch or something like that. God.
Supercilious, yeah. Yeah, there's always an adjective that's this long ahead of it. Yeah. So anyway.
Well, I watch all these things that for British terminology and slang insults and things like that. And, you can take like the word absolute and add it to a noun and get a great British insult. Like, you absolute pine cone or something like that. And it's just, it works. It just works.
Somehow it seems civilized to call somebody a pine cone.
Yeah, but
instead of calling them a jerk,
I think it
seems a
all in the delivery, I'm guessing, What else do we have?
An upscale insult.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about Theo Wen, the horrible child in the chicken coop. We certainly learned that Auntie Joan is broke, basically. She can't even get her own car insurance.
Right.
So we got that going on.
Yeah, that was sad.
Yeah. And then, of course, we've got the birth. So we've got the final episode where Martin's definitely leaving. And, we see Tasha, the teacher at the school, pass out. And then they realize that that's Tommy, the taxi's wife, right?
Right.
And they figure everything out. So
Right.
what did you think of the whole scene where Martin's trying to chase down Louisa and the cars crashed and all that?
Yeah. It was like, okay, finally, some of the stuff I've been waiting for the whole season seemed like maybe it was going to happen because he was going to be the one to save her, really. And how would Louisa know she shouldn't get in a car with that guy? I mean, when he said, "Oh, I'm just going to wear sunglasses and be okay," and Martin's like, "No, you're not," but he just walked away. He should have gotten Joe at the time. But that whole thing, you could sort of see like maybe this is going to lead to something, and it took till like the last second of the show, but
Yeah.
finally
Which, of
there
course,
was some
is
connection.
the last episode of the season, where I just love when he gets
Right.
the baby, right? And he's just like, you can just sort of see like, oh,
Well, and he was when she pretty quickly after she got the baby said, "Do you want to hold him?" And he was kind of like, "Oh, I don't know. I might not do it right. I don't. I don't know what to do with the baby." And she said, I felt like some growth on her part. She would have said, "Martin, come on," but she said, "You can learn."
yeah,
And so it's like, okay, there's hope here. If she could take a step back and say that, and instead of getting mad, there's hope here.
yeah,
And he still said no, but then he said yes, and took the baby. And it seemed like just a glimmer of maybe something was clicking.
yeah, yeah. It seemed like there was a
So
little
yeah,
awe,
yeah. And okay, I have season 5.
right? But of course, what does he then say right after he's got the baby? The head's misshapen, the pressure
Yeah,
of the birth
yeah. Start
canal.
talking about yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good.
Well, to be really blunt, a lot of newborn babies don't look very pretty when they first come
No.
out. They really don't, for a reason he said. But
Yeah.
but if it's yours, you don't even think about that, except if you're Martin.
Right. Right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. There's one thing that I wanted to mention, or maybe two actually. In the last episode, we've got when Tasha passes out, a little girl says, "Are you okay, miss?" I think to her. And that's
Yeah.
actually Martin Clunes and Philippa Braithwaite's daughter with a cameo.
I
So that was,
knew. Okay, I had read somewhere that their daughter had a cameo, but I didn't know. And I said, well, maybe it's this episode. They just said somewhere in season 4. And I said, well, maybe it's this episode because there were so many kids in it. Because
yes.
the field, there was the dance. They were trying to do the end of year dance or something. And yeah, okay, so that was his daughter. Okay.
Yes. 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 And then I think this is the first season where we start seeing interesting names for patients show up. I mean, he's never been good with names, right? He forgets people's names all the time because he doesn't, seem to care to get them. But you need to start paying attention to patient names, because I'll give you the one that we see in season 4 is there's a Mr. Gleebles, and his first name is Dan. So if you put them together, he's basically Dan Gleebles, like dangly balls. So you have to start paying attention
Okay.
to the names. And also there was
Okay.
Ted Nugent.
double up.
The guy who had the hairball was Ted Nugent, who
Ted
is a
Nugent?
famous. Yeah, that's Ted Nugent.
Yeah, I know who Ted Nugent is, but interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So start paying attention. Sometimes they're
Yeah,
obvious,
that
and
was
some.
weird.
Yes. Yeah. We're
When he
going to go
cuffed
there in a
the hairball.
second.
I did notice that he was twirling his hair.
Is there any pure Doc Martin-y things?
Just a tie, if you're ready to talk about, compare it to Best
I wanted
Medicine.
to, exactly. I wanted to see if you had anything else to say before we did that. Yeah.
No, not about this season. Just what happens next, and how I'm sure it's not going to be a smooth road for because Martin's going to keep saying things like, "Well, his head's misshapen." So, but
Yes.
I'm eager to see how this works out, because babies can be challenging. Yeah.
Even under the best of parent circumstances, let alone
Yeah.
people who aren't married, who seem to be like loggerheads all the time.
Yes.
All right, so let's go into since you are a Best Medicine season 1 viewer, we just talked about Hairball Man. So what did you think between the two shows, how Hairball Man kind of gets handled?
I don't know. I just still feel like Doc Martin is further on the spectrum or something. He's just more clueless, more saying inappropriate things that are more inappropriate than. I just feel like the character in Best Medicine is not quite as far that way.
Yeah. But what about each show has now had an episode with the guy with the hairball, right? So in Best Medicine, it was the episode where Martin's parents come, and Martin's father, Robert, is right.
I'm trying to remember what.
He's a gastroenterologist, Robert Best, and the guy has terrible breath, and Martin says you got to go to the hospital, and then he actually throws up the hairball, and Robert Best is like, you got to go to the hospital, but I know what's wrong with you. But in Doc Martin, we've got an entire story written around the guy with the hairball. He's this farmer who is broke.
Oh yeah, and who lost
right.
Right. It was right. Again, it was more like in Best Medicine, it was more like he's just a patient, and this is his quirky illness, versus a member of this community. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. To me, that's the difference in the shows. Is sort of you have a lot of people in Best Medicine. There's a lot of characters that we see. They have a number of repeating characters, right? More than just who we might consider, Bert, Al, Pauline, the whatever constable, whatever aunt. I think Best Medicine might have more people that we see frequently because we actually get to know the teenagers who yell at Doc Martin in Best Medicine, where we don't get to really know them, at least through season 4. But
well, and the people that run the restaurant too. The people that run the restaurant are not their characters in the show. They're not Bert and Al. So
right, yeah, yep. So it's just but I thought that the treatment of Hairball Guy was a much deeper, richer story than it was in Best Medicine.
I feel like that character was more three-dimensional. You learned about his backstory and stuff, and it was just a person coming in with a quirky illness. In the other show, it wasn't. You didn't learn everything about him and his whole family, and he's there, he's gone.
Yep.
Once they figure it out, kind of thing. You never know in Doc who's going to come back, show up again.
Right.
Maybe we're not done with the ball guy. I don't know.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think I've seen him in a couple of the episodes because I think he was in the Norwegian people one because I think we learned his name as Harley later on. I don't know if we knew his name as Harley. We might have known it in the one with Robert Best, but I think we see him later on. And then Best Medicine season 1 kind of ends on a baby plot, right? Like Louisa wants to have a baby. Now, who's she going to have the baby with?
It's more like, yeah. And he said, in Best Medicine, if I remember correctly, it was like he wanted to support her, but he didn't say, be the biological father necessarily.
Yeah.
Or in that way. I mean, I didn't think there was any indication they had slept together in Best Medicine at this point.
But you certainly got a sense that he was going to have a conversation with her about their relationship, but she precludes him, right? By saying,
yeah.
But she's like, it would just be too weird for us to be in this town and we can't date. And then you see she's talking to Mark about a baby, and you're like, is Mark gonna father the baby? Is like, what's gonna happen here? And I also think that in season 1 of Best Medicine, Martin's blood phobia is improving, but we had to get all the way to season 4 of Doc Martin for Martin's blood phobia to be improving.
Right. But the irony to me is that we still don't really fully understand it in Best Medicine, like what caused it completely. There's still a pretty big gap of why is he so afraid, and was he good before, and then all of a sudden something happened, and now he's or did he have it all along, and if so, how did he possibly do surgery? So some of that, there's still a lot of unanswered questions in Best Medicine yet. So how is he improving when it's like he hasn't even really admitted what caused it? But
I'm going to bring up YouTube. I've got a great group of people on YouTube who comment on our episodes here. So let me just bring this up if I can real quick. All right. So comments from other people on the past episodes we've got from Gabs S210. As far as the blood phobia thing in Best Medicine, I actually think they gave us the answer as to why he got the phobia in episodes 1 and 2. There's not much more we need to know. I think that what we actually want to know is the details of the event accident itself. The blood phobia reasoning was already explained, that the accident happened, he watched his sister probably bleed, and then years later this suppressed trauma returned, now he has the blood phobia. So that's a perspective. I don't know what you think about that.
Yes, but has he dealt with his sister's death? I mean, and particularly the whole thing that he can't talk about it with his parents in Best Medicine, I don't think that's been dealt with. So would it be realistic that he could get past that blood phobia if he doesn't resolve some of that other stuff? That's what I'm thinking.
I see, yeah. So I think it sounds like what you're saying is he didn't, you agree he didn't have a blood phobia in the past because obviously he was a successful surgeon, right? So he had done something that allowed him to just ignore, not even have a phobia of blood. He was obviously doing the work. Now he's got this maybe reinvigorated trauma that gives him a blood phobia. And so we don't know how he's going to deal with it. And we do know that there's this undiscussed situation with his parents that after the accident, they never talked about the accident or his sister. So I think between you and me and Erica and Doug, like that's the thing that we're looking to get more information about, which is what the heck happened with that accident. Right. So the phobia, I think we can buy that we understand it was the trauma of this child brought to him on the operating table that made him think about his sister.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. But I think if that whatever happened with his sister never happened, he would have been able to deal with the trauma for this child. It's because it
Yes.
tied back to his sister, and that's the part. No,
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. We don't, we don't, I mean, we know there was trauma with his sister. We don't know the details of the accident, and we don't really understand how he managed to put it out of his mind to become a surgeon in the first
Up
place
until,
up until now. So
yeah.
to me, there's a lot that still needs to be done there. The blood phobia in Doc Martin, it's explained at this point as he viewed people instead of just bodies as actual people and in relationship with other people. So they could be somebody's wife or somebody's mother or something like that. But both shows, I don't really get why they would have necessarily a blood phobia as much as an inability to cut people open.
Yeah, that makes more sense to me, that if you're afraid of that part of it, yeah.
But Martin Best's situation of having this trauma with blood and then having this girl read this on the table, making him remember it, gives a real blood tie to it, which I think Doc Martin Ellingham didn't really have that blood tie.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Which is
I think that's-
interesting because, you would think that Doc Martin would have a better tie, and maybe it doesn't, or at least not through season 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, cool. Well, anything else best medicine-y or anything else that you can think of?
Yes. I am, after seeing more of Edith in Doc Martin, and at the end of Best Medicine, it seems like it's pretty clear she's going to be in at least some episodes in season 2. I am eager to see what they do with her.
Yes.
In Best Medicine.
Yeah.
So that really struck me in this season because Edith was a part of multiple episodes.
Yeah. And the parallel is there. It's Edith Montgomery and Eden Montgomery. Both of them are in like OBGYN fields. They both have a history with Martin. And Eden certainly seems like she's interested in trying to reignite the relationship, just like Edith was. Yeah.
Right. But she, in either case, I didn't really quite see why, but that's, and in both cases, both women seem almost like a female version of Martin or something, to have something in common, be a little out of touch with human beings kind of thing. And at first that was going to be the case, because I would think people that go into, infertility as a career would be very compassionate people, but she's not in either show. So
yeah. And certainly when we first meet Edith, you have a sense that Martin may not be romantically interested in her, but she's a good companion for him because he really likes the intellectual exchange. And you could tell with Eden Montgomery in Best Medicine that he enjoys talking the medicine with her. Like he's more animated with her than he is with a lot of other people because they're talking medicine stuff. So they've drawn that parallel as well.
Yeah, I think he views her as more of his intellectual equal than anybody in Portwenn. So
yeah. Well, good. So obviously you're gonna watch season 5. You ripped through season 4 quite quickly. I'm glad I won't be holding you up here.
I'm not a binger, but I can do two in a night.
Yeah. Well, take your time now because I'm now out of pocket for a while. But that'll be a fun thing.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm not even gonna do my little Buckham Fair blurb because it's too late by the time anybody's gonna see this video. But you can always donate to the hospital itself. You don't have to go through Buckham Fair to do that. That's always available. But cool. All right. Well, listen, as we saw today in today's episode, if you comment on YouTube, I'm definitely reading it and we're definitely thinking about it, trying to incorporate stuff. So folks, if you like this, subscribe to the feed, like the episode, consider being a guest. If you want to do that, send mail to chesla@podcastportwenn.com. And Patty, as always, I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching the show and being willing to share it with all of us so that we can relive it a little bit.
My pleasure.
Thanks for joining Podcast Portwenn. Podcast Portwenn is an independent fan production, not affiliated with, endorsed by, or sponsored by Buffalo Pictures, ITV, Fox, or the creators of Doc Martin or Best Medicine.